In a world where empires rose on glory and buried their sins in silence, this channel opens the doors history tried to erase. Here, we don't tell the stories you learned in school. We uncover the rituals, the betrayals, the forbidden truths carved into palace walls. Every video is a descent into power, fear, and the dark secrets of kings, queens, and forgotten victims. So if you're ready to witness the side of history they tried to erase, subscribe to this channel so we can stay connected. Be sure to like the video and step into the shadows with us, where the real past still breathes. Above Rome's greatest arena, crowds cheered for blood. But beneath the sand, where no sunlight reached, another world existed. A world of chains, condemned nobles, and rituals history tried to erase. Tonight, you'll descend into the Hypogeum, where a senator's daughter waited not just for execution, but for something far worse. And when a champion gladiator claimed her before death could, an alliance was forged that would shake the games themselves. Stay with me, because what happened beneath the arena, Rome never wanted remembered. Beneath the sand, Rome had another law. They cheered for blood above. But beneath the arena, Rome kept its real secrets breathing in the dark. A senator's daughter was lowered into that underworld in iron, where names meant nothing and bodies meant everything. And when the champion came to claim what the arena had already taken, she realized her execution wasn't the worst part. Claudia Severina first tasted the iron when she tried to swallow her fear. The collar was cold, too heavy for something so small, and it pressed into her throat like a hand that never let go. In the villa by the Bay of Naples, she had worn pearls. Here, beneath the Flavian amphitheater, she wore the smell of damp stone, sweat, and something older like a temple that had been abandoned and turned into a cage. The Hypogeum was a city under a city. It breathed through cracks. Torches trembled in wall brackets, throwing shadow bars across faces. Somewhere far off, animals slammed their bodies against wood and iron. Somewhere closer, men trained wooden blades striking posts with a rhythm that sounded almost ceremonial, like a drum calling a crowd to worship. Above them all, the arena waited like a mouth. Claudia was 26. 6 days ago, she was daughter of Senator Marcus Claudius. Now she was a number on a slate, a condemned woman awaiting a public death. Her silk stola had been replaced by a rough shift that scratched her skin. Her rings were gone. Her wrists were chained to the collar, and every movement reminded her that Rome had decided she was no longer a person, only property. In the cells beside her, women sat in different versions of the same ruin. Some whispered prayers to gods who did not answer underground. Some stared forward with eyes that were already leaving. Claudia didn't cry, not because she felt brave, but because something in her refused to grant this place the satisfaction. Tears were private. The Hypogeum deserved nothing from her except resistance. Footsteps came, not the hurried steps of guards, not the dragging steps of prisoners. These were deliberate, measured, confident. The sound stopped at her bars, and the torchlight lifted to reveal a man built like the arena itself. Thick shoulders, scarred forearms, the calm posture of someone who had survived violence long enough to stop flinching. He wore a simple tunic, but the gold band on his arm marked him out. Champion. Elite. The kind of fighter whose victories bought him privileges the law never meant to give a slave. His gaze moved over Claudia, the way an official might inspect livestock. It was not lust she saw first. It was ownership, routine, the practiced assessment of someone used to being rewarded with what others lost. "This is the senator's daughter?" He asked someone behind him, voice quiet but certain. A guard answered, bored. Claudia Severina, condemned. Execution scheduled during the Ludi Romani. The champion's mouth curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. 7 days, he murmured, like he was tasting the number. Claudia straightened on her knees, chains tightening, collar biting. "Who are you?" she demanded. That question, sharp and wrong in this place, made the guard shift. Condemned women didn't question. They begged. They bargained. They broke. Claudia asked as if she still belonged to the world above. The champion stepped closer, fingers slipping through the bars to tilt her chin up. His touch was controlled, almost clinical, but it made her skin crawl because it was done without hesitation. Your father's name means nothing down here, he said. I'm not asking who you were. I'm asking what you want to be called when your old life is done. She held his stare. I didn't kill my husband. He gave a short laugh, dry, uninterested. The courts say you did. That's enough. And he said his name like a verdict. Titus. Alias Magnus. They call me Magnus the Destroyer. The guard's keys chimed. The cell door opened with a sound Claudia would remember for the rest of her life. Iron giving way. Rules giving way. The world above becoming myth. Magnus entered. The space suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. You can walk, he said, or I can drag you. Claudia stood. Her legs trembled, not from weakness, but from the knowledge that every step was a surrender, forced into the shape of dignity. She walked because walking meant she still chose anything inside, a place designed to erase choice. They moved through corridors that twisted like veins. Doorways passed, cages, storage rooms. Dark stains on stone that looked too old to be cleaned. And as they walked, Claudia understood a truth that Rome's poets never wrote, and Rome's historians never praised. The arena did not begin on the sand. The arena began here beneath the sand, where fear was refined into obedience. Magnus stopped at a set of doors larger than she expected. His quarters, a champion's privilege. The door opened, and torchlight revealed furniture, linens, a table, book's comfort carved out of cruelty. Claudia's breath caught. If a man could build a home in the underworld, what else had Rome normalized down here? Magnus set a cup on the table. Real wine, not vinegar. Then he looked at her as if she were a problem he might enjoy solving. Sit, he said, before anything happens. We should talk. And Claudia realized, with a cold pulse of dread, that the most dangerous thing in the Hypogeum wasn't brutality. It was a man who could choose when to be brutal. The economy of the condemned above the arena, Rome believed death was the spectacle. Below it, death was only the final transaction. Because in the Hypogeum, the condemned did not wait to die. They waited to be used. Claudia did not sleep that first night in Magnus' quarters. The pallet prepared for her was far cleaner than the stone cells she had been dragged from. But comfort felt like another form of control. The torches burned low, and shadows stretched long across the chamber walls, turning shelves and furniture into watching figures. She lay still, listening. The Hypogeum at night revealed what daylight hid. During the day, it functioned like machinery, gladiators training, animals roaring, administrators shouting orders. But at night, the structure exhaled its secrets. Sounds slipped through stone corridors like smoke. She heard weeping first. A woman's voice, distant but sharp with panic, breaking again and again until it dissolved into hoarse pleading. Guards did not silence it. No one rushed to stop it. The crying was not disruption. It was routine. Then came laughter. Male voices, low, casual, the kind of laughter men shared when discussing something ordinary, something expected. Claudia strained to understand the words, but could only hear tone, and tone told her enough. And then came the other sounds, rhythmic, urgent, muffled through walls, but unmistakable. Claudia closed her eyes, forcing herself not to imagine the faces of the women making those sounds. But imagination did not need permission. It supplied images anyway, chains, hands, the absence of witnesses. Her stomach turned, but she did not weep. Not here, not where grief would feed the very system that thrived on breaking women before breaking their bodies. Morning came slowly, announced by iron striking stone guards walking their rounds, keys chiming like bells in a temple dedicated to death. Magnus was already awake. He dressed in his training tunic without ceremony, movements efficient, practiced. A man preparing for work, except his work was killing men before crowds. "You'll stay here during the day," he said, tightening the leather straps around his wrists. "My quarters are private. No one enters without my permission. And if I leave?" Claudia asked. He paused, then looked at her with something colder than cruelty practicality. "Then you become common property." The phrase hit harder than any threat. "My claim on you is personal," he continued, "not official. If you're seen outside alone, the guards assume you're unassigned. That means anyone can take you gladiators, handlers, administrators. No one would question it." Claudia held his gaze, refusing to let the fear surface. "So your protection ends at the doorway?" "Yes," Magnus said simply. "And outside it, mercy doesn't exist." When he left, the silence returned, but now it felt heavier because she understood what it contained. She began to explore the quarters, careful, observant. The chamber surprised her. It was not luxurious, but it was undeniably human table, shelves, writing tools. On one shelf sat scrolls, books. She unrolled one cautiously. Greek philosophy. Stoic writings, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius. Texts about endurance, fate, virtue under suffering. Claudia frowned. A gladiator who read philosophy was a contradiction so sharp it unsettled her. A man trained to kill studying how to live with honor? It meant Magnus lived between worlds' brutality and reflection, instinct and restraint. And that duality made him more dangerous, not less. Because a purely cruel man was predictable, a thinking one was not. Her exploration stopped when she reached a small drawer. Inside lay writing materials, and beneath them, half hidden, a small iron key. She did not touch it long, only enough to understand its weight, its secrecy. A key meant something was locked, something Magnus did not want easily found. She returned everything exactly as it had been. When Magnus came back hours later, sweat darkened his tunic, muscles tight from training. He noticed her alert posture immediately. "You've been thinking," he said. "I've been listening," she replied. He poured wine again, casual, unthreatened. "Then you understand now." "Understand what?" "That the arena isn't only about combat." Claudia met his eyes. "It's an economy." Magnus' brow lifted slightly approval. "Condemned prisoners are dead already," he said. "Their executions are scheduled. What happens before that is irrelevant." "To the law," she said. "Yes." "And to morality?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer immediately. "Morality doesn't operate underground," he said at last. "Only hierarchy." He explained it without shame, like describing grain storage or tax collection. Champions received privileges, better food, private chambers, and access to prisoners. Women especially. Rewards, he said, for victories. Motivation to keep winning. Claudia's hands tightened in her lap. "And the women?" she asked. "They die anyway," Magnus said. "The arena considers the interim. Usable time." The phrase hollowed the air between them. Claudia forced herself to speak. "So beneath Rome's greatest monument, there's a system of invisible slavery." Magnus drank from his cup. "There has always been slavery. The arena just organizes it efficiently." Silence followed. Then Claudia asked the question that mattered most, not with anger, but with calculation. "And why?" she said. "Am I the exception?" Magnus watched her for a long moment. Because the truth was not simple. Because her survival, her dignity, her untouched status inside a place designed to erase both, meant she was part of a decision still unfolding. And when he finally spoke, his answer carried more danger than comfort. "Because," he said quietly, "you may be more valuable alive than broken." And Claudia realized, with a chill deeper than fear, Mercy had never been the reason she was spared. She was being preserved. For something. The price of mercy inside the Hypogeum was never kindness. It was calculation. Every favor had a cost. Every restraint a hidden motive. And Claudia was about to learn that being spared could be more dangerous than being broken. The realization settled over her slowly, like dust in torchlight. Magnus had not touched her. Not the first night. Not the second. In a place where women were treated as temporary property, his restraint stood out like silence in a battlefield. But the longer it lasted, the more it unsettled her. Because restraint meant patience. And patience meant purpose. That evening, the Hypogeum pulsed louder than usual. The Ludi Romani were approaching Rome's grand festival of spectacle and death. Preparations intensified above and below the sand. Claudia could feel it in the vibrations through the stone, in the hurried footsteps in corridors, in the raised voices of administrators calculating death like accountants balancing ledgers. Magnus returned late, sweat-slicked, carrying the smell of iron and oil from the training yards. But there was something else in his expression, tonight focus sharpened by decision. "You've been listening again," he said, noticing her alert stillness. "I hear everything," Claudia replied. "You forget. Silence is louder when you're waiting to die." He studied her, then nodded once, as if acknowledging a truth she had earned. "You asked why you were spared," he said. "And you said I was valuable. I said you might be." He poured wine for both of them, though neither drank yet. The cup between them felt ceremonial, like an agreement, not yet spoken. "There's a man above the arena," Magnus began, "who profits from these games more than anyone. The editor. He decides what the crowd sees. And what they don't." Claudia listened carefully. Power inside Rome always had layers, and the arena was no different. "He's promised Rome something spectacular this festival," Magnus continued. "A senator's daughter executed publicly. A noble woman reduced to entertainment." Claudia's throat tightened under the iron collar. "My death is advertising," she said. "Yes. And you?" "I'm scheduled to fight that same day," Magnus said. "A featured match. Champion versus champion. Blood for the crowd. And your execution as intermission." The cruelty of the design was almost artistic. He leaned forward slightly. "But the editor has rivals. Men who want his reputation destroyed. If the promised spectacles fail, his position collapses." Claudia felt the first spark of something dangerous hope, shaped like strategy. "You're being asked to sabotage the games," she said. Magnus' lips curved faintly. "You learn quickly. And I'm part of the sabotage. You're the centerpiece." Silence fell again, but this silence was different, charged, electric, full of moving possibilities. Claudia's mind raced through implications. If I disappear, if I don't die on schedule, his credibility collapses. "Yes." "And in exchange?" she pressed. "My freedom," Magnus said plainly. "Purchased, legal, permanent." The word freedom echoed strangely in the underground chamber. It sounded almost mythical, spoken by a man born into chains. Claudia rose slowly, chains whispering. "And what happens to me after this sabotage? After I serve your bargain?" Magnus didn't answer immediately. He watched her the way a tactician studies terrain. "That depends," he said at last, "on what you can offer beyond your disappearance." She understood then. This was not rescue. It was alliance or nothing. "You want leverage," she said. "I want insurance," he corrected. "The man offering my freedom is powerful. But men like him honor deals only when it benefits them. I need something that makes betraying me dangerous." Claudia's past surged forward to trial. The poison accusation, the brother-in-law who inherited everything. "I have information," she said slowly, "about the Petronius family. Crimes, smuggling, debts, affairs. Enough to ruin them if exposed." Magnus' eyes sharpened. "Written evidence?" "I can produce it." Now the calculation shifted visibly behind his gaze. 2 condemned lives suddenly carried political weight. "You survive," he said, "and your father protects those who helped you. The editor's rival gains power. I gain freedom. Your enemies are destroyed. A network of mutual survival," Claudia said. "A network where betrayal costs more than loyalty." They stood in silence, both recognizing the enormity of what they were constructing, a conspiracy born, not from trust, but necessity. But Claudia felt something else beneath the strategy. Fear, because every alliance underground came with a price. "Why tell me all this?" she asked quietly. "You could have used me without explanation." Magnus' answer came slower this time. "Because you asked me not to treat you like property," he said. "And because men fight harder beside allies than over prisoners. It was not kindness. It was respect earned through defiance." Outside the quarters, the Hypogeum roared with preparation beasts being moved, cages lifted, platforms tested. The machinery of death was accelerating. Magnus moved to the doorway, then paused. "Understand this," he said without turning. "If this plan fails, your death will be worse than anything scheduled now." "And yours?" she asked. He glanced back, expression carved from iron. "I won't die alone." The door closed behind him, leaving Claudia in the torchlit chamber, chains cool against her skin, mind burning with calculations. She had been spared violence, only to be drawn into something far larger. Because survival beneath the arena did not belong to the innocent. It belonged to those willing to gamble everything. And Claudia Severina had just placed her life on the table. The alliance written in darkness freedom was never given beneath the arena. It was negotiated in whispers. Every promise was sharpened by betrayal, every alliance balanced on fear. And as the Ludi Romani drew closer, Claudia learned that survival required more than courage. It required sacrifice of truth itself. The nights that followed no longer belonged to sleep. They belonged to strategy. While Rome above prepared garlands, feasts, and crowds hungry for spectacle, the Hypogeum prepared quieter ceremonies agreements sealed without witnesses, futures traded like currency in torchlit chambers. Magnus returned each evening, carrying news that shifted like sand beneath Claudia's feet. "Contact has been made," he said on the second night of planning. "The rival editor is interested." "Interested in me?" Claudia asked. "In what you represent," Magnus corrected. "A senator's daughter condemned publicly is valuable. A senator's daughter who escapes is devastating." She absorbed the truth with cold clarity. She was no longer merely a victim of Rome's cruelty. She had become a weapon. "You vanished during the games," Magnus said. "Removed before your execution spectacle begins. Chaos above. Disappearance below. And afterward, you are delivered outside Rome to allies loyal to Marcellus. From there, your father retrieves you." It sounded clean when spoken. Too clean. Claudia folded her hands to stop them trembling. "And if your rival decides I'm more useful dead than alive?" Magnus met her gaze without flinching. "That's why we build leverage." So they began. Each night, Claudia spoke while Magnus listened, not as captor, but as conspirator. She recounted every detail of the Petronius household. Illegal trade routes hidden within shipping manifests, bribes paid to customs officials, debts owed to lenders who charged forbidden interest. She described Gas Petronius, the brother-in-law, who had framed her, his temper, his paranoia, his fear of scandal greater than fear of law. Magnus documented everything, carefully, methodically. "Truth alone isn't power," he said as he wrote. "Proof is." She wrote testimonies of her trial, the suppressed witnesses, the bribed magistrates, the speed of the verdict. Ink became her voice in a world that had silenced her. Each document sealed her value further, but also her danger, because knowledge made her harder to discard. On the fourth night, Magnus revealed the larger structure. "This isn't just escape," he said. "It's layered sabotage. He spread a rough map of the Hypogeum on the table. Equipment failures during the morning hunts. A beast cage released too early. A lift mechanism jammed. Confusion above draws guards upward. And below? Claudia asked. Below, you're moved through service tunnels used for scenery transport. Hidden in plain sight, she traced the route with her finger, memorizing every turn. And you? She asked. I fight as scheduled, Magnus said. Victory keeps suspicion away from me. But if the sabotage is discovered, it will be, he interrupted calmly. But by then, you'll be gone. The certainty in his voice should have reassured her. Instead, it frightened her more. Because Magnus spoke like a man already resigned to consequences. The fifth night brought the final step insurance. Magnus retrieved the small iron key Claudia had seen days earlier. You wondered about this, he said. He opened a concealed compartment beneath the desk hidden, so cleanly she had never noticed the seam. Inside sat a sealed container. Everything you wrote, he said, placing the documents inside. Evidence against the Petronius family. Your testimony. Names. Crimes. He locked the container. This goes to a freedman I trust outside the arena, he explained. If anyone betrays this alliance, the documents are released and destroy everyone involved, Claudia said quietly. Exactly. Mutual destruction. Mutual protection. A web where survival depended on everyone else surviving too. It was brilliant. It was terrifying, because it meant no one could walk away clean. As the sixth night fell, tension in the Hypogeum thickened like storm air. More guards moved through corridors. Administrators whispered behind closed doors. Even the animals seemed restless, as if sensing disruption beneath routine. Claudia stood near the doorway of Magnus' quarters, listening to the distant roar of the crowd rehearsing celebration above. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow, Magnus confirmed. She hesitated before asking the question that had grown heavier with each passing night. If this fails, will you regret helping me? Magnus considered longer than she expected. No, he said finally, because regret belongs to men who had choices. I was property at 14. I've been killing ever since. Helping you escape may be the first decision I've made that wasn't ordered. The honesty struck deeper than reassurance. She stepped closer to the torchlight, studying his scarred face, the face Rome celebrated as entertainment. And if we succeed? She asked. Then Rome loses two things it believes it owns, he said. A champion and a condemned woman. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine it freedom, sunlight without chains, her father's voice not distorted by iron corridors. Hope, fragile, dangerous. And then the door slammed open. Guards flooded the chamber, armed, armored, faces hard with authority. Behind them stepped a man Claudia had never seen, but instantly feared. Rich tunic, rings, administrative power carved into posture. I am Gas Publius Cometus, he announced calmly, editor of the Ludi Romani. His gaze swept the room, then settled on Magnus. The sabotage ends tonight. The air froze. Magnus didn't move. Claudia didn't breathe. Because in that moment they understood. Their alliance had not been hidden. It had been watched. And now the games would begin. Earlier than planned. The night Rome chose an example when Rome feared humiliation. It did not correct mistakes. It created spectacles. And that night, beneath the arena, Claudia learned she was no longer meant to die quietly. She was meant to be remembered in terror. The chamber felt smaller the moment Gas Publius Cometus entered it. He did not shout. He did not threaten immediately. His power lay in calm certainty, the composure of a man who controlled how thousands lived and died for entertainment. Torchlight reflected off the rings on his fingers as his gaze moved between Magnus and Claudia, measuring them not as people, but as disruptions to his carefully engineered spectacle. So, he said softly, This is where my missing prize has been hidden. Claudia forced herself to stand straighter despite the weight of her chains. I am not hidden, she replied. I was placed here. Cometus smiled faintly. Placed, preserved, cultivated. Words change nothing. You were meant to die publicly. Instead, you conspired privately. Magnus stepped forward slightly, not aggressive, but deliberate. If you have accusations, editor, speak them plainly. Oh, I intend to, Cometus said. He gestured lazily, and guards seized Magnus before he could react. Even a champion, unarmed and outnumbered, could not resist iron and spears. Claudia felt cold terror spike through her chest, but she did not cry out. Fear was what Cometus wanted to see. I have been aware of the sabotage for some time, the editor continued, pacing slowly through the quarters as if inspecting property. Rivals always think themselves clever. They forget that power survives by anticipating betrayal. He stopped before Claudia. You were to disappear tomorrow, during the morning hunts. A senator's daughter vanishing beneath my own arena. His voice hardened slightly. An embarrassment I could not permit. Magnus strained against the guards, jaw tight. You have no proof. Cometus reached into his tunic and withdrew a scroll. I have confession. The word fell like a blade. He unrolled it just enough for Magnus to recognize the seal. Signed by one of Marcellus' intermediaries, Cometus said. Names, routes, payments, your involvement. Claudia's breath caught. The network had been infiltrated. Magnus said nothing, but the stillness in him was not surrender. It was calculation, even now. You'll be executed at dawn, Cometus said to him casually. Before the games begin. A warning to other gladiators who forget they are property, not partners. Then his gaze returned to Claudia. As for you, he stepped closer, studying her face like a sculptor, imagining destruction. Your execution will be modified. Her chains felt heavier instantly. You were meant to die swiftly, he continued. Now, you will serve education. Rome must see what happens when condemned women believe themselves capable of rebellion. He leaned near enough that she could smell wine on his breath. You will not simply die, he whispered. You will be displayed. Broken first, Claudia forced her voice steady. You think fear will protect your reputation? I know spectacle will, he replied. He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Oh, and your father? He added lightly. He has been informed that your death will be unforgettable. The door slammed shut behind him. Guards dragged Magnus away in chains, his blood marking the stone where they forced him down the corridor. Claudia was alone again. But this time, the chamber felt like a tomb already sealed. Night deepened slowly. She did not sleep. She sat beside the table where their alliance had been built, where documents had been written, where hope had taken shape like architecture in the dark. Now it all seemed fragile. Broken. Magnus would die at dawn. She would die after, but slower, publicly. As an example, her mind spiraled through options, escape routes, alliances, leverage, but every path seemed cut. Cometus had moved too quickly, too thoroughly. Yet one thought refused to die. Magnus was not executed yet. Arrested did not mean finished. And sabotage networks rarely relied on single plans. If Cometus had uncovered one layer, others might still remain unseen. She rose, chains rattling softly, and walked to the chamber doorway. Guards stood outside, but fewer than she expected. In the distance, shouts echoed through the Hypogeum. Not organized, not routine. Then came the sound that froze every thought in her mind. An explosion. Deep underground, stone trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Animals roared in terror. Guards shouted, rushing past the chamber toward the disturbance. Chaos unplanned, uncontrolled, was spreading beneath the arena. Claudia's heart pounded as realization struck. The sabotage had not been stopped. It had only changed shape. Moments later, New sounds erupted, metal striking metal, men yelling, something heavier collapsing. Then she heard it, a voice she recognized, Magnus, roaring not in pain, but in battle. And as the locks outside her chamber rattled, violently forced, not opened, Claudia understood the truth Commodus had failed to grasp. The games were still about to be sabotaged, just not in the way anyone had expected. The Escape Rome tried to erase Rome, recorded the battles fought on the sand, but it buried the battles fought beneath it. Because what happened the morning Claudia Severina escaped was not spectacle, it was humiliation. The explosion did not stop with a single blast. It multiplied. Deep within the Hypogeum, hidden stores of oil, stage machinery, and animal cages became weapons. Fire crawled along wooden beams. Lift mechanisms jammed mid-rise. Chains snapped. Roars of panicked beasts echoed through corridors meant to control them. The underground world, Rome's carefully engineered machine of death, began to devour itself. Claudia stood inside Magnus' quarters as the door shuddered under repeated blows. The lock, once a symbol of her confinement, was now the only barrier between her and whatever chaos raged outside. Then the iron split. Not cleanly unlocked, but broken. The door flew inward. Magnus stood there, breathing hard, wrists bloodied where bonds had been forced apart. One eye swollen, lips split but alive, burning with a focus sharper than any blade. "There's no time," he said. The simplicity of his voice cut through her shock. "You were supposed to die at dawn," she said. "I still might," he replied. "Move." The corridor beyond him was smoke-filled, torchlight flickering wildly as guards ran in conflicting directions. Somewhere nearby, a beast cage had collapsed. Claudia heard claws scraping stone, handlers shouting in panic. "This wasn't the original plan," she said as they moved quickly through the tunnels. "No," Magnus answered. "Marcellus activated contingencies when the first conspiracy was exposed. Fire, equipment failure, animal release, enough chaos to fracture control. Enough for escape," she realized. They turned into a service passage Claudia had only seen mapped on parchment. Now it pulsed with movement, workers fleeing, administrators shouting orders no one followed. Rome's order had cracked. At an intersection, Magnus stopped abruptly and seized a fallen guard's blade, cutting the chain from Claudia's collar. The iron dropped from her throat with a sound she would remember longer than any cheer from the arena above. For the first time since her arrest, she could breathe fully. They ran. Behind them, more explosions shook the stone. Lift platforms jammed mid-shaft, trapping animals and men between levels. The Hypogeum had become exactly what Rome feared: uncontrollable violence without spectacle. Ahead, a gate stood half open. A man waited beside it, cloaked, face shadowed. "Senator's daughter?" he asked quickly. "Yes, Marcellus sends me." "This way?" Claudia looked back at Magnus instinctively. "You're coming," she said. He shook his head once. "My exit is different." Fear tightened her chest. "You'll die if you stay." He almost smiled, tired but steady. "I was always meant to die here." Freedom was the gamble. And now? Now the gamble paid. Shouts erupted behind them, guards regrouping. Magnus stepped back, blade ready. "Go," he ordered. Claudia hesitated only a heartbeat before following the cloaked man through the gate and up a narrow service stair. Each step upward felt unreal. Light grew stronger. Air changed, less damp, less suffocating. And then she emerged onto the surface. Morning sunlight struck her eyes like revelation. Behind her, the Flavian amphitheater loomed, Rome's proud monument, yet smoke curled from hidden vents, and distant roars of confusion replaced the expected cheers. The spectacle had failed. A cart waited nearby. She was pulled inside, covered with rough cloth, and driven swiftly through service roads away from the arena. As Rome's streets passed in blurred motion, Claudia understood the scale of what had occurred. A senator's daughter scheduled for public execution had vanished. The games had descended into chaos. Animals had escaped early. Machinery had failed. Guards had fought gladiators in tunnels unseen by crowds. And Magnus, she did not know if he had survived. Weeks later, Rome would whisper explanations. Sabotage blamed on incompetent administrators. An editor Gaius Publius Commodus removed from his post in disgrace. Investigations launched quietly. And Claudia Severina, supposedly dead, reappeared beside her father, carrying documents that shattered the Petronius family's power. Her conviction was never formally erased, but her execution was never rescheduled. As for Magnus the Destroyer, records confirmed he fought one final battle during the disrupted games. Not as scheduled, not for spectacle, but as part of the chaos that enabled multiple escapes. He survived. Purchased freedom followed honored, because too many powerful men were now entangled in the conspiracy to deny it. Claudia never saw him again, but letters passed between them for years, discussing philosophy, fate, and the strange alliance forged in darkness. Her written testimony, preserved in family archives, would become one of the few surviving accounts describing what happened beneath Roman arenas. Not the glory, not the combat, but the hidden economy of condemned bodies, the privileges granted to champions. The women erased before history could record their suffering. And that is the truth Rome preferred buried. The arena did not begin on the sand. It began below it, in chains, in cells, in silence, where some died as spectacle, and a very few, like Claudia Severina, survived long enough to remember.